The sun cast its golden rays over the stunning seaside town of Costa Verde, famed for its scenic beaches and luxurious resorts. It was a picturesque setting for what many considered the ideal wedding. Emma Thompson, a radiant bride with a glowing smile, had just married her long-term partner, Mark Collins. Their love story began in college, and after years of being together, they decided to seal their bond in a ceremony straight out of a fairy tale. Loved ones traveled from near and far to witness the union of these two souls, seemingly meant for each other. The ceremony was flawless, from Emma's breathtaking gown to Mark's perfectly tailored suit, and the guests were deeply moved as the couple exchanged heartfelt vows under an arch of white roses. It was the kind of wedding that rekindled belief in true love. Following the celebration, the newlyweds embarked on their dream honeymoon to the exclusive Paradise Cove Resort, a secluded haven located on a private island. Renowned for its impeccable service and jaw-dropping views, it was the perfect place for the couple to begin their new life together. They checked into a lavish suite with an expansive ocean view, making promises of lifelong happiness to one another. For the first few days, everything seemed to be going splendidly. The pair were spotted lounging by the pool, enjoying candlelit dinners on the beach and taking romantic moonlit walks. But beneath the surface of this blissful retreat, something ominous was brewing. Friends back home noticed an unsettling silence from Emma on social media. No posts, no updates, just eerie quiet. It felt like something was off, but no one could have foreseen the tragic events about to unfold on the 5th day of their stay. That morning marked a turning point. When the resort's housekeeping staff arrived to clean the couple's room, they noticed the "Do Not Disturb" sign still hanging on the door. Respecting their privacy, they decided to skip the room and return later. But when they came back in the afternoon, the sign was still there. Growing concerned, they knocked, but there was no response. After multiple attempts to reach the couple, the staff, increasingly worried, used an emergency key to access the suite. What awaited them inside was a scene beyond their worst nightmares. The room was in complete disarray. Furniture had been overturned, a vase lay shattered on the floor, and the bed was soaked with blood. The staff stood frozen in shock at the sight of Mark Collins lying motionless on the floor, his body battered and bruised. The peaceful paradise had been shattered in an instant, transforming into a sight of horror. Emma was nowhere to be found, leaving everyone with one burning question: what happened in that room? The authorities were immediately notified, and soon the resort was swarmed with police officers and forensic experts. The once festive atmosphere of the honeymoon destination was replaced with dread and confusion. The investigation kicked off urgently. The police needed to find Emma, and fast. Resort staff and guests were interviewed, and security footage was meticulously reviewed. The fairy tale romance had swiftly morphed into a dark mystery as detectives tried to unravel the events leading up to Mark's death. What they found was not a simple crime scene. The evidence was both perplexing and chilling. There were no signs of forced entry, and all windows and doors were securely locked from the inside. The lack of disturbance outside the bedroom suggested everything had occurred within those four walls. But one glaring question remained: where was Emma? The detectives issued a missing persons alert and began their search for her. Resort staff recalled seeing Emma earlier that morning, walking along the beach, appearing deep in thought. She had even stopped to chat with a few guests, who described her demeanor as calm and composed, certainly not what one would expect from someone who had just been through a traumatic event. The timeline became even murkier. How could Emma appear so normal just hours before her husband was discovered dead? Digging deeper, the detectives uncovered that Emma hadn't just been avoiding social media. She had also cut off communication with her family. No phone calls, no texts, nothing, since the moment they arrived at the resort. It was as if she had vanished. The plot thickened when a partially packed suitcase was found in the closet. Clothes were hastily shoved inside, toiletries scattered, and Emma's passport was missing. A quick check at the front desk confirmed no one fitting Emma's description had checked out, and no boats had left the island that morning. As investigators widened their search, questioning more guests and staff, one reported seeing Emma arguing with a man on the beach the previous evening, but couldn't identify him. Another guest had heard muffled shouting from the couple's suite, followed by what sounded like a heavy object falling. However, without solid evidence, these observations were mere fragments of a much larger and sinister puzzle. The urgency of the situation grew with each passing hour. Detectives even began to consider the possibility that Emma herself was in danger. Was she on the run, or was she hiding something far darker? A closer review of the resort security footage revealed a startling discovery. At 3:15 a.m., a figure resembling Emma was seen sneaking out of the suite, dressed in dark clothes with her hair covered by a scarf, moving with purpose. Though the footage didn't show where she went, it was clear that Emma wasn't merely a victim in this unfolding drama. As detectives pieced together more clues, they uncovered secrets that painted a far more complicated picture of the couple's relationship. What had appeared to be a dream wedding had, in reality, been far from it. Friends shared that Emma had been behaving strangely in the weeks leading up to the ceremony, withdrawn, anxious, and evasive. Rumors of arguments and doubts circulated among the guests, but none had taken them seriously at the time. The further the investigation went, the more layers of the story were peeled back, revealing hidden turmoil within the relationship. Detectives realized they were dealing with much more than a tragic accident. This was the beginning of a chilling and complex mystery. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered more disturbing elements about both Emma and Mark. Mark Collins, who had been seen as a loving and successful husband, was also a wealthy entrepreneur with a thriving business empire. But with success came enemies. As the investigators traced Mark's financial dealings, they discovered a long-standing feud with a former business partner, Greg Sullivan. Their relationship had soured after a failed investment, and Greg had allegedly blamed Mark for his financial downfall. Could this grudge have spiraled into something as extreme as murder? Meanwhile, Emma's past was no less complex. Friends described her history of tumultuous relationships, often marked by jealousy and possessiveness. Her previous engagement had ended abruptly when she discovered her fiancé had been unfaithful. The betrayal had reportedly devastated her, and those close to her believed she had never fully recovered. Could her marriage to Mark have been merely an attempt to move on from that heartbreak? Or was something much more sinister at play? The investigation took a darker turn when one of Emma's close friends came forward with a revelation. Just weeks before the wedding, Emma had confided in her about Mark's infidelity. According to the friend, Emma had been devastated upon learning that Mark had been seeing another woman, a former colleague named Laura. Emma had been torn, unsure whether to call off the wedding or go through with it and deal with the betrayal later. This bombshell gave the detectives a potential motive. If Emma had known about the affair, her actions could have been fueled by anger and betrayal. With this new information, detectives began to explore whether the crime had been premeditated. If Emma had planned this, why choose their honeymoon as the setting for such a dramatic act? As the investigation progressed, they uncovered even more unsettling evidence. Mark had recently changed his will, leaving a large portion of his fortune to Emma in the event of his death, a decision made just days before the wedding. The timing raised red flags. Was this about revenge, or had Emma been plotting to secure her future from the start? But Emma wasn't the only one under scrutiny. The detectives turned their attention to Laura, the woman at the center of the affair. If anyone could provide insight into Mark's state of mind leading up to his death, it would be her. However, finding Laura proved to be more difficult than expected. She had left her job abruptly and had been out of contact with her friends and colleagues since the wedding. It seemed as though everyone connected to the couple had something to hide. As law enforcement intensified their search, they began monitoring local ports, airports, and border checkpoints. Days passed without any sign of Emma, leaving the investigators frustrated. The media caught wind of the story, and soon the case became a nationwide sensation. Headlines like "Bride on the Run" dominated the news, and public speculation was rampant. Was Emma fleeing out of guilt, or was she a victim herself? Just when the investigation seemed to be hitting a dead end, a breakthrough came. A local fisherman reported seeing a woman matching Emma's description boarding a small boat late the night of Mark's death. She appeared distressed, her face partially hidden by a scarf, and she clutched a small suitcase. The boat was reportedly headed for a remote neighboring island, a rugged location known for its sparse population and difficult terrain. With renewed hope, detectives dispatched a search team to the island. They combed through dense jungle and deserted beaches, questioning the few inhabitants who lived there. For days, there was no sign of Emma, and the possibility of finding her alive seemed to grow dimmer. Just as the team was about to call off the search, they stumbled upon an abandoned shack hidden deep in the forest. Inside, they found Emma's suitcase, with clothes strewn about and a half-empty bottle of water on a makeshift table. It was clear she had been there, but once again, Emma had vanished. Panic set in among the investigators. Had Emma fallen victim to foul play, or was she still hiding somewhere on the island? Their discovery of her phone, discarded in the bushes nearby, only deepened the mystery. The phone had been wiped clean of data, but forensic experts were able to recover fragments of deleted text messages. What they found was chilling. Emma had been communicating with an unknown number, discussing an escape plan and a promise to end it all. But who was this person aiding Emma, and where had they gone? The investigation now focused on identifying Emma's mysterious accomplice. Whoever this person was, they had played a key role in helping her evade capture. Was this individual motivated by love, loyalty, or fear? And most importantly, where were they now? As the detectives closed in on the unknown number, they were running out of time. If they didn't find Emma soon, she could slip away for good, or worse, end up dead herself. Just when the case seemed to be reaching its darkest point, a local informant came forward with a crucial lead. He claimed to have seen Emma in the company of Victor Ramirez, a notorious figure with a long history of involvement in smuggling and forgery. Victor was known for his ability to help people disappear without a trace, for a price. If Victor had been aiding Emma, it explained how she had managed to stay hidden for so long. Victor had been on law enforcement's radar for years, but his slippery nature and lack of hard evidence had kept him from being caught. Now, however, the detectives had a name and a suspect. Tracking down Victor wouldn't be easy, but if they found him, they would likely find Emma too. The investigation intensified as they began monitoring Victor's known associates and communication networks. After days of surveillance, they finally got a break. A reliable source tipped them off that Victor had been spotted at a remote safe house on the outskirts of a nearby city. A raid was quickly organized, and within hours, the safe house was surrounded. When officers stormed the location, they found Victor and Emma. Emma was alive, though visibly shaken. She was immediately taken into custody, while Victor was arrested for aiding a fugitive. The tension in the room was palpable as Emma, her face tear-streaked and eyes red from crying, was questioned by detectives. She claimed she had fled out of fear of being wrongfully accused, fear of what she had done, and fear of what was still to come. But there were still too many unanswered questions. What had really happened that night? Was Emma truly a victim, or was she the mastermind behind this deadly plot? Victor, ever the professional, remained tight-lipped. Despite hours of questioning, he refused to speak, leaving the detectives to rely solely on Emma's account. According to her, a violent argument had erupted between her and Mark the night of his death. She had confronted him about the affair, and things had escalated quickly. Emma claimed that Mark had lashed out at her, forcing her to defend herself. In the chaos, Mark had fallen and hit his head. Panicked and unsure of what to do, Emma had contacted Victor, who helped her flee. But was Emma's story the truth, or another layer of deception? The detectives weren't convinced. Emma's calculated behavior during her flight didn't align with someone acting in self-defense. And then there were the texts exchanged with Victor, which suggested that this escape had been planned well in advance. As the investigation reached a crossroads, detectives realized that unraveling the full truth behind Mark's death would require them to delve even deeper into the secrets both Emma and Mark had worked so hard to conceal. As the detectives pressed Emma for more details, inconsistencies in her story began to emerge. Her claim of self-defense didn't explain why she had gone to such lengths to cover her tracks, or why she had involved a man like Victor Ramirez, a known criminal. It was becoming increasingly clear that there was more to this story than Emma was letting on. While Victor continued to remain silent, his involvement couldn't be dismissed. The forensic team uncovered traces of a sedative in Mark's bloodstream, leading investigators to a chilling new discovery. Hidden in the suite's bathroom was a small vial with residue of the same sedative, suggesting that Emma had drugged Mark before his death. This crucial piece of evidence shifted the investigation from a crime of passion to a premeditated plot. With this revelation, the detectives confronted Victor once more, this time armed with the new evidence. Seeing the vial, Victor's tough exterior began to crack. After several moments of tense silence, he finally spoke. "I didn't know she was going to kill him," Victor admitted quietly, his voice shaking slightly. "She told me it was just to knock him out so he wouldn't stop her from leaving with the money. I thought it would end there. But when I saw him, I knew it had gone too far." Victor explained that Emma had orchestrated the entire scheme. She had lured him into helping her escape, promising a hefty payout from Mark's wealth. The plan, according to Victor, was to drug Mark, humiliate him, and disappear with his fortune. But when Mark unexpectedly died from the head injury, the plan unraveled. Desperate, Emma had called on Victor to help her flee the island, and he reluctantly agreed, unaware of just how deep he was getting involved. The detectives now had a clearer picture of what had happened, but they still needed Emma to confess. When they confronted her with the evidence, the sedative, Victor's confession, and the surveillance footage, her composed facade began to crumble. Tears welled up in her eyes as she realized her web of lies was unraveling. Emma finally broke down and confessed. Through sobs, she admitted that she had been planning her escape ever since she learned about Mark's affair. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, she had been consumed by anger and hurt. She couldn't bear the thought of being publicly humiliated, so she decided to go through with the marriage, only to exact her revenge during the honeymoon. "I wanted him to pay for what he did," Emma whispered, her voice filled with bitterness. "He betrayed me. I didn't plan to kill him. I just wanted him to suffer." Emma explained how she had slipped the sedative into Mark's drink that night, planning to leave him incapacitated while she took the money and fled. But when Mark confronted her, enraged by the argument over the affair, things spiraled out of control. In the heat of the moment, Mark had attacked her, and in her panic, she pushed him away. Mark fell, hitting his head on the corner of the bed, and when he didn't get up, Emma realized the situation had turned deadly. Instead of calling for help, Emma had made the fateful decision to cover up the crime, thinking no one would believe her. She reached out to Victor, who helped her stage the escape. But her plans fell apart when the authorities got involved sooner than she had expected. The detectives listened carefully, but they knew Emma's confession wasn't the full story. There was still a deliberate, calculating side to her actions. The sedative proved she had intended to incapacitate Mark, and her attempt to flee with Victor hinted at a deeper, darker level of manipulation. With both Emma and Victor in custody, the case was nearly closed. The trial that followed was swift and sensational. Emma, now painted as a cold and calculating woman bent on revenge, was found guilty of murder and sentenced to life in prison. Victor, for his role as her accomplice, received a 20-year sentence for aiding and abetting her crimes. The town of Costa Verde, once a tranquil and idyllic place, was left forever changed by the events that had unfolded. The story of Emma Thompson and Mark Collins became a cautionary tale. a reminder that beneath the surface of even the most perfect lives, dark secrets can lurk. As Emma sat in her prison cell, her name fading from the headlines and the public eye, she was left alone to reflect on the choices that had brought her to this point. Her quest for vengeance had cost her everything: her freedom, her future, and the life she once had. Mark's death had not only claimed his life, but had consumed hers as well, leaving her trapped in the consequences of her own making. Victor, too, faced the reality of his choices. What had started as a simple act of greed had snowballed into a nightmare that cost him his freedom. Now, imprisoned, he was haunted by his decision to aid Emma, realizing too late that his involvement had sealed his fate. For Costa Verde, the tragedy of Mark and Emma's story lingered long after the case had been closed, serving as a dark shadow over the once peaceful town. What had started as a fairy tale wedding had unraveled into a deadly game of deceit and betrayal, leaving scars that would never fully heal.